Howdy. This is the Views from the Shop podcast. I'm your host, your one and only host, Tim Miller. And today it is Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. And I wish you a very, very, very happy baby massage day. On today's show, we are recapping and reacting to day 2 of the transfer portal in college basketball, specifically on the Ohio State side. We've got a couple new names here that are public and kind of nationally recognized, so we're going to walk through those. I'm going to walk through a tweet from someone within the program today who is fed up. We're going to start with that, actually. And then at the end of the show, I will give you an update on some names that we already know of from yesterday, and I'll let you know what I know that is new there. Again, I want you to know that as we go through this transfer portal window, I'm not here to break news. I'm not here necessarily even to give you new names. What I'm here to do is to break down what happened throughout the day on the podcast, and that's as far as I'll go on the podcast, and I'll tell you why here in a second. But as a reminder, if you're new here, this is your only Ohio State basketball exclusive podcast covering the Buckeyes year-round. That means we preview, then recap every single game the Buckeyes play throughout the season. No other podcast does that. Not only that, during the transfer portal, we're covering it hard every single day on Twitter, on Instagram, of course, here on YouTube and on podcast as well. And then we get into the summer guest series where head coach Jake Diebler, other staff members, coaches, players, and former players come on the show, talk a little bit about themselves, tell stories, all those different types of things. It's a great time. So make sure you're subscribed. YouTube's going crazy right now, okay? That's not me trying to hype things up. I'm just saying what the numbers are telling me, okay? So that said, because it's going crazy, a lot of people here are new. Make sure you subscribe. You do not want to miss what's going on in the transfer portal, and if you don't subscribe, you're going to miss things, and I want what's best for you. What's best for you is to not miss anything, okay? Like the video as well on YouTube, please. These videos, I think we can get 75 likes, okay? That's the goal on this one. Let's get up to 75 likes on the video on YouTube. One other thing, I want to take you to the Substack again. It's Views from the Shop podcast.substack.com. Right now, if you're watching on YouTube, you're looking at the chat. This is the first thing you see before you actually get into the chat. Now, if you get into the chat, I've sent several messages today with a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. Some names that are not publicly known are there in the chat. They're secret. They're hidden away. Not everyone gets to know about them. If you want in on that insider intel, you can go to viewsfromtheshoppodcast.com/chat to get there. And actually, let me go back, pause. If you're watching on YouTube, here's a link for you, okay? Here's a link to get in there. If you want to get in there, give it a try. I think you might like it. And then, of course, you can just go sign up for free on viewsfromtheshoppodcast.substack.com and get access to a bunch of articles as well as I continue to cover the transfer portal. Okay, now that that is out of the way, let's get into the actual show portion for today. So we're going to get in some players, but the first thing I want to talk about here is a quote. It's a quote, not a quote, it's a tweet, okay? Came from former Buckeye and current Ohio State recruiting coordinator, Terrence Dials, okay? Here's what he said on Twitter today, all right? I'm gonna just show it to you. I'm just going to show it to you. This app, quote, this app, X is what he's talking about, or Twitter, goes crazy for misinformation. Believe nothing you hear and only one half that you see. That is Terrence Dials, end quote. That's Terrence Dials on what's going on Twitter right now, specifically as it relates to Ohio State basketball. I'll say it again for you. Quote, this app goes crazy for misinformation. Believe nothing you hear and only one half that you see, end quote. That is from Terrence Dials. He posted that on Twitter today. So why did he say that? What's going on here? Look, I will give you the nitty-gritty, the brief of what's going on within Ohio State basketball right now, okay? The first thing I can tell you is that this is no badge of honor, okay? Everyone's doing this at Ohio State. Right now, everyone is working around the clock. I can tell you that the typical schedule probably looks like getting in the office around 7:30, 8 a.m., and then you go home about 5:30 p.m., get a couple hours with the wife, give her a squeeze, get some dinner, and then you're back into the office at home, I believe at that point, working around the clock, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock p.m. I mean, the amount of sleep that these guys are getting right now, it's nothing at this point. Not that that's anything impressive or different from any other program out there, but what I will say is that this staff, just like everyone else, is working really, really hard. At the same time, social media is working very, very hard as well at this point. So what we're seeing is a lot of different accounts kind of springing up who want to talk about Ohio State basketball, which is not a bad thing. I'll never tell you that's a bad thing. I'm doing it myself here. But what you're seeing them do is they're posting a lot of names, they're posting a lot of rumors, they're talking about NIL and how much a player is going to get and all those different types of things. And quite frankly, a lot of it is just not true. And on top of that, you've got Ohio State getting linked to players who they're linked about as closely as me and my neighbor are linked, right? Like we're not necessarily buddy. Like, sure, he mows my lawn and I appreciate that. But we're not that close. We're not that tight. We're not thinking about moving in together. Okay. It's not that deep. And when you have people tweeting things about Ohio State basketball being linked to ABC player, there are a couple consequences of that Ohio State internally, I would say, is probably getting frustrated with. Like, I don't know, but I would say you're probably getting frustrated at this point with the amount of information and, as Terrence Dials would say, misinformation is out there. So the number one reason why people are going to get upset with this, at least internally for Ohio State, is you're driving up the cost of players. When they're associated with Ohio State, you're driving up the cost because you're driving up the competition. One more player, one more program, I should say, that's involved with a player drives up the costs, and it allows Ohio State to have less and less leverage on a player. So if you care about Ohio State, if you care about Ohio State basketball being good and successful and getting the players that you want, you don't really want to see Ohio State linked to 50 players on Twitter, for example. So you're driving up the cost because you're driving up the competition. Players are also going to lose interest in Ohio State. So let's say that I don't know, pick a player here. Let's say I'm Kameron Taylor, okay? I'm coming in from UNC Asheville. I'm going to play guard, I'm going to play on the wing, whatever the case may be. And I'm interested in Ohio State. And then all of a sudden I see a tweet that says Ohio State is interested in Jalen Haralson, for example. Now, again, these are not apples and apples comparison. I'm not saying that this is what's actually happening. I'm just giving an example, right? Like, if you get into a situation where I'm a player and I see Ohio State is interested in a similar style, fit, or role type of player that I am, why would I continue to have a strong interest in Ohio State? It makes me feel like maybe I'm not as wanted, or maybe I don't know where my place is. And we know, right, that Ohio State's recruiting several different guys for the exact same spot. We understand this. But at the same time, there's just this balance, and it's delicate that agents and players and programs all have to work within. And quite frankly, I don't know this for a fact, but I would say that you're probably looking at agents right now who are scouring the internet to see what names are getting involved with certain programs and trying to leverage their own players for the highest possible NIL amount that they can, which is what I would do if I were an agent, and I can't be mad at them for that. But that's happening, and that also frustrates all programs, not just Ohio State. I'm sure it frustrates all programs. The last thing is you don't want to let fans down, right? Big time name. We're going to discuss a big time name here in just a second that Ohio State may be involved with. When you see a big time name like that and you're an Ohio State fan and you see a top 5 player in the portal, a top 10 player in the portal, and then Ohio State doesn't get them, what happens? Ohio State fans get upset. They get angry. So I'm not telling you that I know exactly where Terrence Dials is coming from, okay? I'm not going to act like I'm super close and I rub elbows with him or anyone else within the program or anything like that. I'm just saying that when I see that tweet today, this is where my mind goes. It's not someone just saying things to say things. It's real. It's true. This is frustrating to people, and I think you're seeing a symptom of that when you see that tweet from Terrence Dials today. So I feel like we need to kind of reset on that. That was something that was posted today. I thought it was notable. I wanted to bring it up in the show. Okay. Now we're going to get into some players. We'll first talk about the portal situation for Ohio State. We'll get into new players today. Here's what I want you to do. Okay. At the end of the show, if there are players that I have not named and you want to ask me about them, I will answer to the best of my knowledge. But I'm not going to bring up players that have not been mentioned with Ohio State unless it's like a 247 Sports article or an On3 article or some kind of nationally recognized brand is talking about these guys being connected. If some burner is going to talk about Ohio State and a player being connected, that's not enough for me to really care. So there's that. And again, on the Substack, there's a bunch of other players that are not necessarily public that I posted there. So just be advised on that, okay? So let's first talk about where we're at with the roster. Devin Royal, gone. Expected to go to UConn. Gabe Cupson, Tayson Chapman, guards in the backcourt are gone as well. And Colin White, also leaving Ohio State. Matthew Grujic has not made an announcement yet. He's going to be gone from Ohio State. He's not going to return. Expect an announcement by the end of the week on that. That said, Ohio State expecting to retain John Mobley Jr., Anthony Thompson, Alex Smith coming in as freshman. They're also expecting to retain Amari Bynum, Josh Ojawuna, and Ivan Negovin, Braylon Nash, and Miles Harrow in that group as well. Obviously not major contributors whatsoever. So that said, as we look at the roster right now, where is Ohio State heading? Day 2, what do we need to recap? What do we need to get into? The first is a big-time transfer, and Ohio State is going big game hunting. Big game hunting to the tune of Rob Wright from, he's from BYU. He's also from Baylor. So let's get into him here. Now he entered the portal early this morning. And when that news came out, I said, oh boy, that's a big one. And then just knowing some things that I personally know, I did some research. And then I found, yeah, Ohio State's gonna have a chance here for Rob Wright. Am I saying a big chance? I don't know, but they're going to have a chance and they're going to pursue here. So there's a couple of kind of backside things. The first of which is Rob Wright, as a freshman, he went to Baylor, okay? That's big because you've got a connection there, not only with Josh Ojawuna, who came in from Baylor to Ohio State. I don't know how big of a deal that is, but I think it is somewhat notable, okay? But Wright goes from Baylor to BYU. Another connection there is Luke Simons, an assistant coach on the staff at Ohio State right now. Simons came in from Baylor. Was he the primary recruiter on Rob Wright? No, he was not. But was he a part of the process? Was he a part of getting him into Baylor? Yes, absolutely. So I think you've got some connection there that matter. I'm not really one to buy that like player to player really matters. I don't like Amari Bynum being friends with a player from Colorado. I don't see how that matters in the grand scheme of things. I don't think Jake Dealer makes decisions on who's friends with who. Like I don't think that's a thing. But regardless, you may have a connection between Ojawuna and Rob Wright. So there could be some connections there. He's a 6'1" guard. He's from Delaware, so kind of close to Ohio. Not sure that staying close to home really matters for a guy like Wright, given that he went to Texas and then Colorado for college. But maybe it does. Maybe he wants to come back home. 6'1" guard from Delaware. 18.1 points per game. Last year at BYU, 4.6 assists per game and 3.7 rebounds per game. Now, those numbers down the stretch, a little bit odd, a little bit quirky because BYU loses Richie Saunders. So I don't really know if that's a bad thing for Rob Wright necessarily because you lost a really, really good player. So because of that, like, yeah, your numbers will probably go down a little bit. Your field goal percentage will go down a little bit because it's going to be harder to score because there's more attention on you. If you go to Ohio State, you got John Mobley Jr. to play with. You got Amari Bynum to play with. That shouldn't necessarily be an issue, but you never really know. So 18.1 points per game, 4.6 assists per game, 3.7 rebounds per game. Shot 47% from the field, 41% from the three-point line, and a 57.3% true shooting percentage. That's pretty good as well. Not the highest three-point attempt rate, not overly efficient at the rim either, but numbers are good enough for sure, and he scores. He scores in bunches. He had 13 games with 20 or more points so far this year, and he had 39 points against Colorado. in a game this year. That was his season high. Really, really strong assist rate as well at 24.2%. But here's the thing, okay? You've got some numbers that are really, really good. You've also got some numbers that are questionable. Number one being that you're 6'1", maybe 185 pounds. I mean, not a big kid is Rob Wright. So you pair that with John Mobley Jr., who's in the exact same boat, listed at 6'1". I mean, 6 foot on a good day, maybe, depending on how long the hair is. That would make for a very, very small backcourt. Now, you got Anthony Thompson at the 3. You got Amari Bynum at the 4. They're oversized and over length for their position, at least, I would say. So I would say in terms of size, in the front court, it could be good for Ohio State. In the backcourt, if you add Rob Wright, I don't know. Average offensive rebounder, really not much of a defensive rebounder in terms of defensive rebounding rate. Didn't make much of an impact forcing turnovers either. So you're looking at defense, right? That being a big time a factor for Rob Wright being undersized. I don't know how much you have that. According to 247 Sports, you're seeing Kentucky and Arkansas in the mix along with the Ohio State University Buckeyes. Now, that's kind of it's probably a shock to some people. Again, like I said, there's connections there on the backside that allow this to potentially happen. I guess I would say for Ohio State with Rob Wright, you've got some connections there with Luke Simons and Josh Ojawuna as well. I don't think Ojawuna is that big of a factor in this. Maybe it's nice to have a familiar face there, but this is a player to keep an eye on for Ohio State. The teams that we're talking about, though, and I don't know, you guys in the comments, if you've seen other programs associated with him, I don't know how well Ohio State plays here, right? Like, we all know that he went and he chased a bag when he went to BYU. He took the highest offer to go to BYU. He was locked in at Baylor, and then he was like, I kind of want to test this. I want to make more money. So he left. He left Baylor and he got more money at BYU. BYU not afraid to spend whatsoever. So I would assume he's looking for a payday. I don't have any inside knowledge on this. I don't have anything on this whatsoever, but I'm going to assume that he's looking to chase a bag. I haven't seen any numbers. Again, you guys in the comments, if you're seeing anything, you can feel free to shoot out any numbers that you've seen. I see no college players. I see he's asking 4.5 million, says at Yuta 1076 in a comment here. Again, I don't know if that's true. I don't know where we're getting these numbers from. What I will say is you see numbers like this thrown around all the time. They're basically never right. But if he's asking for 4.5 million, I mean, good luck. Good luck, Ohio State and Jake Diebler getting him. Ohio State's going to be more healthy in the NIL world, I believe, this year. But 4.5 million, that's a large chunk of change for just one player, especially with how saturated the guard market is. So it's a name to keep an eye on. I don't know how likely it is at this point. Maybe I'm surprised here. Maybe Ohio State is a really strong contender. It just feels like there's going to be a lot of blue bloods in the mix, and because of that, I'm a little skeptical on how likely it is that Ohio State can land a player like Rob Wright. But it's definitely an interesting name, and the fact that Ohio State's already associated with him as well, that's really, really interesting as well. So that's a name to keep an eye on. If you're watching on YouTube, please like the video. And even if you're not watching on YouTube, like the video as well. That would be great. If you're watching on Twitter, head on over to YouTube. I'm going to make it super easy for you because I'm going to grab the link to YouTube. I'm going to throw it in the chat, and I'm going to let you go ahead and like the video there. So that's one to keep an eye on if you are an Ohio State fan. No doubt about it. So we'll keep an eye on Rob Wright for sure. And I see this comes from the Trilly Donovan Discord. Everyone talks about Trilly, man. I don't know who this guy is. And it sounds like he's got a lot of good information there, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how reliable it is. I literally don't know a thing about the Trilly. I see everyone talking about it. I don't know. Should I join? Probably not going to join. So that's the talk on Rob Wright at this point. The next player that we're going to talk about here comes out of Villanova, and it is Bryce Lindsay. So Bryce Lindsay has a very, very interesting story, right? Freshman, he plays at Texas A&M. That's where he commits. He plays for 1 year at Texas A&M, transfers down a level to go to James Madison, and then last year in the Big East, he goes up to Villanova. This is an interesting player, I guess, It's not one that I have a whole lot of interest in. I'll be honest straight up from the start. 12.3 points per game, 2.1 assists per game. Then I wrote 2.1 assists per game as well after that. Let me see how many rebounds per game he had. I think I can find that pretty quickly here. Bryce, Lindsay had 2.1. Are we at 2.1 on each? So he did have 2.1 steals or assists and 2.1 rebounds per game. Did Bryce Lindsay at Villanova last year. Not efficient though. 38% from the field, 36% from the 3-point line is not bad whatsoever. But the true shooting percentage very average at 53.2%. Took a lot of shots from behind the arc. Really, really high 3-point attempt rate. Really bad numbers in the paint. 5 of 27 on shots in the paint and not at the rim this year. Really not good whatsoever. So I'm skeptical of a player like Bryce Lindsay at this point. Defensive numbers are not much to write home about. Standing at 6'3", I believe he'd be brought in to be a bench contributor for Ohio State in the backcourt, but I struggle to have a lot of interest in him. And again, I'll be very, very clear. Rob Wright is one where I do believe that there is some real noise there. Bryce Lindsay is just a name nationally associated with Ohio State along with like 20 other teams. So to be that interested in Bryce Lindsay at this point, I probably wouldn't say that it's really warm at this point whatsoever, but it's a player to keep an eye on and just be informed on. And that's the point of these episodes, is just to get you up to speed in about a half hour on what's going on with Ohio State basketball after a day where if you can't be glued to Twitter, which you probably shouldn't be, I can at least get you caught up to speed a little bit. So that's a player to keep an eye on. According to Sam Kaiser, he had a Zoom call with USC today. I don't know if there's been any Zoom calls with Ohio State, and I've said this in the insider subscriber chat on Substack, and I'll say it again here. Zoom calls are not the end-all be-all. Don't get bent out of shape about Zoom calls. So Lindsay's a player to keep an eye on for Ohio State. The next one, Corey Hadnot II, should be one that you're familiar with, coming out of Purdue Fort Wayne. Ohio State played Purdue Fort Wayne this year. Corey Hadnot II was a player that we talked about on that game preview show. I mean, I'm telling you, we're previewing Michigan, we're previewing TCU in the NCAA tournament, and we're previewing Purdue Fort Wayne. Okay, that's what we do here on the Views from the Shop podcast. So make sure you subscribe, like the video on YouTube too. I want to get to 75 likes on this video. I would love it. Corey Hadnot II averaged 20.6 points per game this year, 3.6 assists per game, and 3.7 rebounds per game. Pretty good shooter, shot at 51% from the field, 36% from the 3-point line. Not great from the free throw line at 68%. Now, whenever I'm looking at players like this who are playing a mid-major, especially low-major level, I want to know, how did you do against Power 5 opponents? Now, we know he played Ohio State. In that game against Ohio State, the Buckeyes blow out Purdue Fort Wayne, and he scores 5 points on 2 of 9 shooting. He did somehow come away with 6 steals. Don't remember that. Maybe that was memory hold, but 6 steals against Ohio State. That's awesome. Against Utah, he had 20 points. Utah, do we even consider them a Power 5 team at this point? That's a question some are asking. Not me. I'm not here to put down Utah on an Ohio State basketball podcast, but some are asking, do they really deserve to be a Power 5 team? So there's that. He only had 3 points against St. Louis. That's not a high major team, but obviously they made the NCAA tournament. So figure I throw them in there and made the NCAA tournament as an at-large team as well. 3 points, 1 of 4 from the field in that one. And then against Notre Dame, 29 points, 10 of 16 from the field, and 1. So congrats on beating Notre Dame, as did Ohio State, of course, as we know. So kind of a mixed bag, or less of a mixed bag, just not a great job overall against Power 5 teams. Look, my opinion, I'm not really interested in another Brandon Knoll experiment if we can avoid it. I'm not saying Brandon Knoll is a bad player for Ohio State. I actually liked him more than most, I would say, in terms of his play at Ohio State, coming from the Horizon League, just like Hadnot will, wherever he goes. Brandon Knoll coming in from Wright State in the Horizon League. I don't want a regular contributor. As long as I can handle it, I don't want a regular contributor who comes from a low major conference. I just think it's really hard for that game to translate from low major all the way up to top level high major in the Big Ten. Of course, the Big Ten, the reigning national champions. We know the Big Ten conference is, team name redacted there. But That's a player to keep an eye on, is Corey Hadnot. The second, that's one that was associated. Again, I don't think it's all that warm, just a name to keep an eye on at this point. And again, another name to keep an eye on here. It's Kameron Taylor. He's a rising junior out of UNC Asheville. This player intrigues me. I fear this player intrigues me a lot. He's a 6'7" guard. We love length. We love length. We love height. In many ways do we love that, right? Just as human beings. 6'7" guard, averaging 19.8 points per game last year at UNC Asheville, 2.9 assists per game, and 5 rebounds per game. Now, those numbers probably inflated because you're playing at the low major level. What is that? The Big South, I believe. Can I find that? I can find it. Don't worry, guys. Where did that go? Anyone know? Do we have any true ball knowers out there? It is the Big South. You're welcome. It was the Big South. So playing in the Big South, so you're going to have some kind of adjustment there in terms of numbers. That's a thing that we know, but 19.8, 20 points per game. Round up, he scored 20 points per game in the Big South. Exceptional rebounder on both ends. Both the offensive and the defensive glass was Kameron Taylor. He blocked some shots as well. More of a slasher than a scorer for sure. He averaged 9.8 paint points per game last year at UNC Asheville. That was 98th percentile in college basketball. So the paint scoring, a big part of his game, especially with that size. Again, you always have to question, how will the game translate from playing at a low major to playing at a high major? Games this year against high majors. You want to count Wichita State as a high major? Probably not. He had 9 points. What else should we have here? UNC Greensboro. NC State, he scored 20. We'll take that. Against Miami, Ohio, he only scored 8. We know Miami, Ohio, one of the best teams in the nation because of their record alone. I'm a Miami, Ohio hater. Always will be after this last season. They were not that good, and we don't need to rehash that right now, I guess. Those are your only power major teams. Wichita State, you don't really count that. That's really, truly a mid-major. A high-level mid-major, but a mid-major. And not even really a high-level mid-major over the past few years even. NC State, 20 points, 8 points against Miami of Ohio. So again, you got to question that. When it comes to players like Brandon Knoll, that's a player that I think of most recently for Ohio State because it happened last year. Christoph Tilly, another example, but did play, I don't know what you want to call Santa Clara. Is that a high major because of how much it's won recently, or does it still stick in that mid-major region? I don't know necessarily. Probably the mid-major. I think everyone would probably say that, but you can make an argument that it's a high major type of team. Whatever. You got questions about that. So because of that, I will have my own questions, but what I will say is that Kameron Taylor, he is an intriguing option to me. So let that be known at this point. Okay. Like the video on YouTube. Again, please like the video on YouTube. Drop any comments you got. I'll get through these at the end of the show. I'm going to go through some updates now in terms of players that Ohio State, we know that they are in on at this point, whether it be national reporting or otherwise. Not new names to you, but we'll get into it now. So Jalen Haralson is the first player that I would like to mention at this point, if you do not mind. Jalen Haralson, again, coming in from Notre Dame, he's a player that I identified early on the Substack in an article before the transfer portal opened. I said, hey, take a look at this guy. Ohio State may be connected for several different reasons. They are connected, okay? I believe they completed a Zoom call today. I believed yesterday I said Ohio State was a leader for Haralson, not a leader, but the leader for Haralson. I believe Ohio State is still in a very, very strong position for Haralson. Now, I will say this, okay? I sent a message that kind of freaked the chat out earlier today, the Insider subscriber chat, saying, well, I won't even get into specifics because I don't want to freak people out even more at this point, but I just said, maybe Haralson comes to Ohio State, maybe he doesn't. I still firmly believe Ohio State is a strong contender for Jalen Haralson, and I firmly believe he could end up being a Buckeye. You have the connections with Brian Walsh. You've got the connections just with Ohio State in general. The fact that they recruited him out of high school, weren't that hot on him, but still recruited him. Jalen Haralson, believe they had a Zoom call today. This is a player who I would not be surprised if he visits, and I would not be surprised even if he commits without a visit at this point. So that's a player to continue to keep an eye on. If I'm mentioning a player twice now, 2 shows in a row, I would say it's probably a player to keep an eye on. The next one, that I'll mention is Devin Vanderpool out of FAU. He completed a Zoom call today. I don't remember who reported that, but he did complete a Zoom call today with Ohio State coming in from FAU. This is a player to keep an eye on as well for Ohio State, coming in the backcourt. Probably a piece off the bench for Ohio State. He averaged 16 points per game last year at FAU. So, again, a player to absolutely keep an eye on here as well for Ohio State. And another player that I will mention, it is Devin Brown. Devin Brown is... He's an interesting player for Ohio State at this point. I don't think he necessarily comes in as a player who's going to be big, who's going to be a big time contributor necessarily for the Buckeyes, but he's a Columbus kid. He's scheduled to visit Ohio State on Friday. I think that there's a really, really good chance that this could end up working out for Ohio State and Devin Brown, another Devin Brown who could come into the Buckeyes. At this point, we will see. So those are the names. Names I mentioned yesterday: Sanandra Frew out of Louisville, Alon Sumler out of Charleston Southern, and Corey Mincy out of George Mason. Names I would not say that you're the hottest on at this point if I'm Ohio State, so just be advised on that one as well. That's what I got for day 2. That's what I have got for day 2 on Ohio State basketball in the transfer portal. I will continue to do these shows live every night when we get new news. I think that we will have some commitments. I do think that Ohio State is starting to zone in, narrow in, hone in on different guys, especially at guard at this point as well, I would say. So we'll see what the Buckeyes do. Those are your updates for today. Again, I want to make it very clear, I'm not giving out any inside information here. What I am trying to do is just give you the news. I'm trying to give you the updates from the day that was. So those are my updates at this point. See in the comments, YouTube is being rude to me, okay? I'm seeing that the stream is potentially down. Maybe it's back up. I think it might be back. Yeah, it's back. If you're watching on YouTube, you lost it for a second. Hey, we're back up on YouTube. So feel free to ask any questions you've got now. I'll wait for a couple minutes here to see what people have got to say, and then I will get on out of here. From Aaron Roy, possible Josh Ojabo connection to Rob Wright, like I mentioned. That plays much of a factor, but Rob entering the transfer portal makes little sense because BYU has good money in a class incoming. Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't really think that there's much of a factor there with Ojabo. I will say there's more of a factor probably with Luke Simons. Any words on McKeever, the center from St. Mary's? I don't think Ohio State's going to be in on him. I believe that he's going to be a guy who warrants big-time money, who warrants blue blood attention. I think he's a tier above where Ohio State can go at this point is my guess. Let's get to another question here from Aaron Roy. Ohio State Hoops Insider said the guy from FAU is likely transferring somewhere with a starting job. We look at his as a starter, right? I don't think Ohio State necessarily looks at him as a starter. I don't know if Vanderpool wants to be a starter. I don't know if that's true or not. But we will see on that. I think Ohio State's still in on him. We'll see. There's so many guys that Ohio State's in on, by the way. So many guys that Ohio State's rumored to. We just, again, I said this at the start of the show, got to relax a little bit. Just because you see a player related to Ohio State, connected to Ohio State, doesn't mean that they're really in recruiting them hard. I think it's something that a lot of people probably need to understand. Probably do know, but maybe it just needs to be reinforced. All right. From @Eric Canton. Sorry, I'm a little late. That's okay, Eric. Don't worry. I'm happy you're here regardless. Do you think Ohio State going for Wright means Junie may not come back? It's an okay thought. I'm pretty confident that John Mobley Jr. is going to be back for Ohio State. It's not something that I really worry about. Would I rather have Haralson or Rob Wright? Look, Jalen Haralson's going to come in and probably play that point forward role. At the same time, you've got Anthony Thompson at the 3. You got Amari Bynum at the 4. Jalen Harrison, not much of a floor spacer. Reminds me of a Cohen Carr, for example, from Michigan State without all that bounce, obviously. But Rob Wright is small. And Rob Wright, a bit of a bag chaser, it seems. Is that what I want on my team and my culture? I don't know. So I don't know. I probably lean Haralson, but I understand why there might not be a fit there. Let's see. I already answered that question. And is there a particular reason you focus on the players you focus on? A lot more guys, as you mentioned on Twitter. Yeah, Aaron, the reason that I focus on these guys, and I've kind of mentioned this before, is I'm not looking to focus on guys who have been like rumored in weird ways or anything like that. I'm focusing on guys who have been mentioned on On3, 24/7 sports articles, anything like that. I'm not focusing on just rumors on Twitter. Like, if that's the case, I got to focus on like 50 guys, and I'm not going to do that. So that's the reason why I do that. Alrighty. I think that's a show. We'll be back tomorrow, maybe. If we continue to get new news, we'll be back. That's what we do here on the Views from the Shop podcast. Again, please like the video on YouTube. Please subscribe on YouTube. And we move along in this transfer portal window, seeing what Ohio State will do. I appreciate you being here today. If you're watching live, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night. Until next time, thanks so much for being here today. I shut up before you shut me off. Go Bucks.